Hi, I'm Amy Coots, and I'm an actor, hypnotherapist, and the founder of Acting with Courage Hypnotherapy. And in this series, I will be interviewing some fantastic actors, writers, directors, producers, anyone involved in the creative arts, and I will be asking them how and why they got into their respective careers, and the advice that they offer to other creatives to look after their mental health and well-being.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Why This. My guest today is emotionologist, somatic coach, and radio producer Nicolette Wilson-Clarke. Nicolette is the founder, creator of The Creative Genius, a coaching and consulting agency that supports the somatic and emotional well-being of the creative soul. Alongside the consultancy agency, Nicolette is also a radio producer and presenter of The Creative Genius show on Riverside Radio in London, which is an online live radio show and podcast that supports the creative in navigating through their everyday emotional, physical, and mental challenges. Away from coaching and producing, Nicolette is also a trained dancer and qualified senior yoga teacher with over 10 years of teaching experience and more than 15 years of yoga practice. Hello, Nicolette Wilson-Clarke. Thank you so much for joining me. How are you?
I am amazing, Amy. Thank you so much for having me.
My absolute pleasure. I think it's been long overdue, to be honest.
Definitely. I'm so glad we could actually do it, though, even in spite of.
Yes, it's in spite of the madness, which we won't delve too much into. But yes, it is definitely a real thing. I have a question for you.
Okay, go for it.
Why the creative genius coach? Why does one choose to do that with one's life?
Yes. So we've got the umbrella of the Creative Genius as the company. It's a consulting and coaching agency that supports the creative in managing their emotions so that they can literally, really courageously, graciously get through each day. That's what it's about, isn't it, most of the time? You want to kind of get through each moment so that you feel as though you're living. And our emotions pause us often. And so I think part of that is we've got the coach section, the podcast section, and the radio show section. And why the Creative Genius show, Creative Genius coach, which is the main part of the Creative Genius, is because I think that physical illness is so obvious. You know, when you break a leg or when you have a heart attack, it's so easily diagnosed. But there is something that we're very aware of with mental illness, that it just isn't as noticed. And usually, if it is noticed, it's going to be noticed through these really weird symptoms or behaviors that people have. And I think the lack of understanding of its function all makes us really, really blind to what happens when the brain malfunctions, when it doesn't work the way that allows you to be effective and positive and live a fulfilling life. And often when we do show these symptoms that are malfunctioning, it's too late. We're at the other end of it. When I say too late, I mean we're already there. Of course, we can pull back. And so the Creative Genius coach, really wants to support creators before they get to that end point, before they get to that point where it's cure. And I saw something on Instagram today. One of my clients posted such a lovely video of a little boy. I don't know if you've seen it yet. A little black boy walking down the road with his rucksack on, and his mum is obviously in the background because she's the one who's filming it. And it's a close-up of him just walking, and he's saying, I am smart, I am blessed, I can do everything. And I think to myself, if we as parents or carers could impart that as a norm to young people growing up, then maybe we'd have less mental health issues undiagnosed or untreated to support the adult that child grows into. We just are not taught in schools about emotion. And if as an adult we haven't learned it, how can we teach our children about it? And this then just goes on as a cycle and a cycle, where as an adult, you're not teaching your children, as an adult who was a child doesn't teach their children. It goes on and on and on. So somewhere along the line, this cycle needs to be broken. And granted, I'm not working with children, I get that, but I'm working at the point where adults can start to realize that actually everything that they do and whoever it is they wish to become, the visions they have, is always possible because we are the creation of our experiences. And our experiences are exactly that. There's something in the past that's placed in the brain, and that's a reference point for us to be able to take action on. We can use it as a reference point, and if we didn't like the outcome, we can then do something different. And so it's about possibility, and that's what the creative genius is about. It's about to be somebody different if you're not happy with who you are right now, and also acceptance of who you are, because that's not wrong. So that's why the creative genius came about, really.
Wow, I don't think I got to say. I think you basically summed up what I also do with my work. I think we come at it through different ways. And yeah, I mean, it's so interesting you mentioned that little boy with the I am statements, because with my work as an RTT therapist, we do a lot of that. When we put clients under hypnosis, we get them to say, I am. What are all the words that you want to say, that you want to believe? So it's 100% true. And yeah, so you and I are obviously coming at the tail, not the tail end of it, but the end of it where, you know, that child has grown up. I just hope that that young boy doesn't lose that, because we a lot of us start with that, right? We go, look at my amazing drawing, look what I'm doing, look at me. And you know, we're the center, or we feel like we're the center of our family's universe. And then something happens that sort of knocks against us, and then the I am statements start to morph into more negative sort of thoughts. I want to go back though. I'm interested to know, and you can share as much or as little with me about this as you choose. Was there a defining moment that made you decide, I want to work with creatives and I want to work on their mental health? Was there something that just a moment or an event that caused you to do this? And if so, would you like to share that?
Great question, Amy. Thanks for asking.
No worries.
I would say, I talked about us being a product of our experiences, okay? And it's not about the actual experience that matters, it's our response to it that matters. Yeah. And when I was growing up, I grew up in a household with a diagnosed schizophrenic dad. And his diagnosed behavior, and I say diagnosed because it's medically diagnosed, it's not an assumption and a maybe it's this. They've classed him and put him in some framework to be able to understand his behavior. Yeah. And so his diagnosed behavior was mega irregular. It was erratic. I didn't understand it. My mum didn't understand it. My dad didn't understand it. And there was a lot of denial going on there. Which meant that he wasn't able to seek the treatment as quickly as possible, which means that it escalates and his health declines. And I think that if I reflect back on it, prior to my dad's decline, he had super intelligence, very into learning and finding new ways of doing things. And people around him often saw him as a little bit different as well, because he didn't stay inside the lines, and he was a little eccentric, and they called him a little eccentric, and he didn't do things the normal way. And you know, he was creative in his thinking, and he did it so courageously, because how hard is it to literally raise above the parapet when other people are telling you not to do stuff? It's a challenging thing, but he didn't care. He had his vision, and he went for it with me and with himself and with our family. And I think that is my catalyst for wanting to work with individuals supporting their mental health and their emotional health. Because if I look at, in the 70s, understanding mental health, it was a stigma. And you didn't talk about it.
No.
And I think that maybe 10 years ago, if I had a similar conversation, I wouldn't declare that my father was diagnosed schizophrenic.
Sure.
Just don't talk about it.
Yeah.
So in those times, you know, when he went to a mental health mental health hospital, you didn't talk about it as a child, that your father was in a mental health hospital.
Yeah.
And the way they treated them in there was, all they did really, from my experience, was drug them up.
Yeah.
So I saw a very different father to who I was accustomed to prior to him being institutionalized. And so I think that the prevention that I am really keen on is my sort of my goal, and my drive is, because I think if he could understand actually that maybe there was a biological imbalance there, chemical imbalance in the brain, that could be dealt with medication, yes, and that's why there was the medication side of it. But an understanding of how the brain actually works can also, I think, empower you and take you away from learned helplessness, where you feel that you are just captive to this way of being. And when you're hearing these thoughts, and when these thoughts are telling you to do things, I think if there's a part of us that just knows that we don't have to listen to them, and we're strong enough to override it, we can start to challenge the thoughts with the help of the medication and feel like there is some hope and there is some way of moving forwards out of this. We don't have to stay on the medication forever. And if we do, we can have a life that is fulfilling. So that was my catalyst, I would say, for the mental health side. Definitely the creative side is that my father is so creative in thinking and outside the box that, without even realizing it, actually, you know, I've always wanted to sing and dance, and I've always loved, I had elocution lessons when I was at school. I've always loved speaking, and without realizing, and these are the influences that you have as a child, you know, speaking with a book and taking exams and learning to project your voice and pronounce stuff, and all of that stuff, of course, it boosts the confidence of a person, but it also gave me the courage to choose what I wanted to do as I went along. Because with that confidence, you make decisions. And each time you make a decision, you know, the brain has a chemical response to that. And you're like, hey, that was a good outcome. I'll do that again. And you keep doing that. So it becomes almost, it becomes a way of being, doesn't it? So that built my confidence into doing the stuff that is quite creative and not following those lines. And I always believe there's a solution. So I would say that my mindset is a growth mindset, where there's always a possibility and there's always another way, even when it feels like there isn't. And sometimes when you feel like there isn't another way, the other way is about you and not about the circumstance that's happening. The other way is about how you're going to respond to it, how you're going to make peace with it if there is no other way. So I would say creatives, I love being around people who are happy to do things differently. They follow their unique self. They're not afraid to be who they are, dress how they want to, have an idea and share it, or have an idea and create it. They're not afraid to be alone, because usually, you know, if you're a little bit different, you're going to be other. You're going to be that person. So there isn't a fear of just being on your own. It's taking that ownness and creating something from it, so that people actually see, my goodness, what you're doing is amazing. And then they gravitate to you and your uniqueness and your amazingness. And so I think that's why I really enjoy working with those particular group of people. But of course, the downside of being creative, we're all creative, aren't we? But some of us choose to do it professionally, some of us choose to do it in a hobbyist way, and some of us, for whatever reason, have been kind of molded into thinking that we don't have it anymore and we can't do it, and we go somewhere else, but it's still there. And the issue I think about is, if you live in your creativeness, you will always be challenged by yourself and by other people. And that challenging is where we get that emotional tirade, where we are becoming other and we start to feel like other, as opposed to accepting. So that's the role that I play in there, is supporting the creative and appreciating that this other is about uniqueness. It's not about negative difference. It's about the place It's about who you are in the world and your contribution to the world, and how you as an individual can really make a difference to other people in a positive way. And if you shy away from it, you're not going to live to your fullest. You really need to step into it.
So, like, I don't know if you can kind of summarize an average day, if that exists, but how do you work with creatives? Like, what would be, I don't know, a consultation, or like, take me through your process. What do you do?
It obviously depends on who's coming to me.
Right.
For example, if I'm working with a singer-songwriter who, whatever reason, is getting anxiety about working on their own, they've been part of a group, that brings up anxiety because it's easy to focus on other people and to manage and direct. But when the limelight is on you, it's quite a different thing, isn't it? So if I'm working with someone like that, in a consultation, it's all about them. So I want to find out what's going on with them and how they're experiencing their world at the moment, how they're seeing it, and how they're responding to their experiences. And that will give me an insight into how they're reacting to stuff. Not for me to tell them what I observe, it's for us to explore it and for them to see it themselves, because that's where the magic happens. So working with someone who has anxious moments and about their next steps or their future. And I've worked with a few clients where we literally map out from the future backwards to where they are. This would be a physical way of doing it, the times when we could be in person. And we would go to that end point of where is it you actually want to be. And as I'm sure you're aware, putting them in the moment. I'm here. What are you smelling? Using all the senses. What are you seeing? What are you wearing? What's around you? What are you feeling? Really getting them in the moment. And of course, they can take off their sight sense and just close their eyes and be there. And then once they've really fallen into that future place, then taking them a step backwards and asking them, okay, so all of this has happened. What was the step that took you there? What did you need to do and create to have got you to that future point? And then at that point, they're sharing with you, well, I need to do this, and I connected with that person, and I created that, and so on. And this goes on to the present moment. So we come back to the present moment. Right. And once they've finished all of that, they've actually got a map of how they get to where they want to go. But they haven't been told, you need to do this, and you need to do that, and connect with this person. They've done it. They've created it. It comes from them, and it feels so authentic and real that actually most of the time they are so ready to just take the first rung of that ladder to start to make it happen, because they realize that actually this isn't impossible, because I've just created that. What you mean I can do that? I've just told you about it. If I've told you about it, then that means it can happen. And so that would be an example of someone who is feeling quite anxious about their future or about the career that they're in and where it can go. And a lot of the anxiety, to my own experience, has come from the fear of how you're going to be seen, the impression that people are going to get of you, how you're going to come across, things people are going to say about you. They're all imagined fears, but they're very real. So from that perspective, if they have this intensity of knowing what their thread is, why they're doing it, the reason why, when they come back to that place of present now and they think of the worries that they had previously about the future, they tend to have dissipated. So it's about taking the focus away from you, putting the focus somewhere else, and really mapping it out yourself to determine it. And so that would be just one example of how I might support someone in that situation where they're worried about the future. Because, you think about the future, it creates anxiety. You think about the past, it's usually about depression.
Yep.
So often that's one example of what I might do with them.
It's very interesting. I know that you've got some lovely words of advice that we're going to get to in a moment. But I hope anyone who's watching this immediately right now can take away the lesson from you. And that is, like, if you look at where you are now, that has come from several iterations, right? That evolved from different things, and that's where you are now. Like, you kept at it until you sort of found your way. And also the other thing that I think people can take from what you've said is, and I had another guest, Daniel Harding, who I interviewed recently as well, is that idea that when that idea keeps coming back to you, and I fully believe this, when an idea just kind of keeps like, you know, nagging at you, so to speak, it's obviously worth pursuing that, right? So when you're hearing that little voice with this project and you can't let it go, it's because it has to be made. So I hope people take that away from this.
It would be brilliant if the listeners and the watchers could pick up on that thing about the nagging voice. Because if we can appreciate that that nagging voice sometimes isn't being heard because of the distractions around us, and because we have this natural desire to keep going and going and going and going, because that's what we're taught as a child. If you want to do something, you got to go for it, take action. Most of us are taught that in some capacity.
Yep.
But we're not told, advised, guided on how to slow down. I remember distinctly being at nursery and having quiet time. I remember having nap time. I remember having milk time. And these were times where you paused and you didn't do any activities and you were just quiet. And we've lost that, I think. And maybe they still have it in schools now. I don't know. But as adults, how many of us really appreciate that by taking a pause moment, we're going to get so much more from that than by going full speed, full speed, full speed, because eventually you're going to burn out. And so I think it would be wonderful if people do take away from this thing about when you pause, you give your body time to actually be heard. And you will hear what it's saying to you just by being still, just by sitting and watching a duck playing in the pond, just by reading a book and then suddenly going into a mind trail of absolutely nothing, what we used to call at school, Nicolette, stop daydreaming. You know, that sort of thing, as if it was so bad. Yeah, as if it was so bad to daydream. And that's where you get your creativeness and your fluidity and your ideas and your self-expression from. But, you know, we're not allowed to step into that as if it's something constructive. It's something that is so distracting and something that can gain you nothing, but that's not the case. I honestly think that pausing is one of the best things. So yes, if people can come away with this thing about listening to the body and really understanding what it's saying, then you will follow that vision and that dream that is nagging you, constantly coming back.
Oh, Nicolette, I could talk to you for hours, but we'll have to wrap this up. So what is your advice for viewers today? Creative viewers in particular, those who are in creative professions, let's say.
Definitely. I'd love to offer 6, there's a couple more as well, but 6 main ones, which are 6 items to put in a self-care kit. I think it's really important. If you were a plumber and you were called out to go to a property to do something, you would have your kit. You wouldn't go empty-handed, because you need to be prepared and you need to deal with whatever in eventualities happen at that property to do with your profession. And I think it's the same with our lives, to do with our emotions. We need to have stuff stashed away somewhere that's personal to us, that we can just dip into when we need it. And that alone can give us that sense of reassurance and inner power and security and uncertainty during uncertain times. And so I'd like to offer some items that you could put in a lovely self-care sort of toolkit for yourself, which if you wanted to do it physically, you just get a box, an old shoe box, decorate it how you want or not, and then just start putting things in there. And you either carry the box around with you. If it's too cumbersome, you don't. You leave it at home and you take little bits around with you so that you know you've got it at hand. And so the toolbox will focus on the 5 senses. And there'll be 2 other bits at the end that I wanted to throw in. So the 5 senses being our taste, our touch, our sight, our sound, and our smell. And I'm very aware that there are a couple of other senses that often aren't talked about, but I'm not going to address them in this. And so I think if we started off with taste, for a toolbox, everybody's going to have their favorite something. I'm a lover of dark chocolate. And for example, hey, So that's my taste as an example. Your taste can be anything else, whether it's healthy or unhealthy, obviously with a moderation on both sides, because too much of anything is not necessarily going to support you. But having a little stash of that. Dark chocolate, for example, is so rich in antioxidants and minerals, and it can also raise your mood, and it can also be extremely comforting as well. And the beautiful thing about it being like, 90% cocoa, 70% cocoa, whatever you can manage with the taste of the bitterness, is that it doesn't have as much sugar in it. So you're not getting that spike in sugar levels. You are getting that ability to not overdo it, because you only need a small slab.
Square.
You need a square, that's it. So, for example, having some dark chocolate in there, or something of your choice. Maybe having tea bags in there. That, for example, if you're on set and you know that they don't provide the tea that you like, I've been there many times. I drink barley cup. Do you know barley cup?
Barley cup? I don't think so.
Okay, so barley cup, you can get it caffeinated with a natural caffeine, or you can get it decaffeinated, and it's a coffee alternative.
Okay, yeah.
And I love the bitterness of it, but I don't drink coffee. So if I'm with clients and they're on set somewhere, I know that if it's a rider or it's a green room or whatever it is, I know that there's not going to be any barley cup there. So I'm bringing my own as my own little toolkit. You might have tea bags, peppermint tea, or whatever it is, something that's going to really support you. Cold drinks as well, because they can invigorate you. So let's move on to the next thing, which is touch. You want stuff ideally that is grounding, and you want stuff that is comforting. You want it grounding because there are moments when you might feel quite anxious and feel kind of up here, and you want to come down to the space of presence. And you may want something that just makes you feel safe, with a comfort, it's going to be okay. So it might be tools, things like, you might be familiar with the elastic band tool, which you put, so use the elastic band in some way to bring you to the present moment. You got it, yeah? That in itself is such a wonderful way to just bring you back into the present moment through touch and through stimulus in some capacity. It might be, when I was working in Fuerteventura, we went to the beach and there were some beautiful rocks there. And I washed them up and I put them in my case. My case was so much heavier, but it was worth it because I have these beautiful, texturous and smooth different rocks that I use sometimes in the bath, because stones and rocks really hold warmth and heat, and they can be very cathartic and cleansing. So if you were out and about working, whether it's on set, whether it's something else, whether you're just in the studio, whatever, you just need hot water. And you can have your stone with you, put it in the hot water, leave it for a bit, take it out, and just have that as something to hold and soothe, or place it somewhere that you want to comfort you. Or if it's something texturous and you just want to distract yourself through touch, you can have a rough something, rough stone, rough rock, brush, it can be whatever it is, just to be able to touch it. I'm going to move on to the third one, which is sight. I have a gratitude jar, and my gratitude jar is something that allows me to see my successes. For those who aren't familiar with what a gratitude jar is and how you might create your own, you simply get a jar with a lid, get pieces of paper, and as you succeed in stuff, and this is your perception of what success, it might be that I just got up at 8 o'clock this morning. Yay! So you write that down. Or it might be that you got a gig, it might be something bigger than that, able to buy a new car, whatever it is, you write it down and you fold it up and you put it in the jar, put the lid on, put the jar away. Then there are moments when you just feel rubbish about yourself. Something has triggered you and you've just forgotten how great you are. Your tool in that toolkit box is this wonderful gratitude jar. You may not feel like doing it, but you just go to the box, you open the jar, and you open out the pieces of paper and you remind yourself how amazing you are. I did that audition and I got that. Oh my gosh, yeah, I wrote that song, I wrote that blog, I wrote that this. And you remind yourself just how great you are, because you are. And as real as it is, when we feel rubbish about ourselves, it's not real, but it feels real. Yeah, it's your real, but it's not the truth. So it's really much about bringing you back to what the truth is and to remember. And by writing it down through sight, it's a wonderful way, small or large. And the other thing is journaling, sight, just seeing those things.
I'm a big journaler.
Writing. Okay, so you get that completely, and I'm sure it's one of the things that you would suggest to your clients.
Absolutely,
yeah. Yes, poetry writing. That's a beautiful, creative way to use words. Drawing. And it might be also letters that you don't send, because when we have things inside and we regret not expressing ourselves in certain situations, it just goes around and around and around, and that creates in itself some kind of emotional tirade. So how about you get a piece of paper and a pen, or you go on your tablet and you write to that person what it was you wanted to say. I'm going to move on to the next one, which is sound, so hearing. And that is, I mean, I love music. I love it. Music gets me out of funk sometimes, you know, my own little moments. So I'm a true believer in having your own playlist, creating a playlist that is just for those moments. I'm a true believer of having your headphones at hand at all times. Always got my headphones. And of course you need something to attach it to. So making sure you've got that as well. And then also think about the different audios. It might be a meditation audio. It might be a nature sounding audio. What is it that would bring you to a point of calm and a point to be able to see things as they are and not greater than they are? I know you know the answer to that. I'm going to move on to smell. I'm a great believer in essential oil. Do you like?
Oh yeah, love them. Love them.
So you want stuff that's going to represent the mood you want to step into, and asking yourself questions, always challenging our thoughts and challenging our present state, because how we are isn't necessarily how we have to be in that next moment. So if I'm not feeling too good right now, I'm asking myself, how do I actually want to feel? But actually, I want to feel uplifted. You know what? I'm going to get some lemongrass. Yes, put some lemongrass on my whatever it is. I'm going to smell it 5 minutes just to sit and breathe. And I can guarantee by the end of that 5 minutes with lemongrass and still time and focus, I come out being like, yes, I love you, world. So what's next? So it's about using smell. Lavender calms, orange and lemongrass upwards, peppermint, patchouli, ground. So research it, explore it, and have a little vial of your essential oil in your toolkit box, the one that really serves you. And then those are the senses, but I'd love to quickly add a couple more if I can, which are not senses. Thank you. There's other things that I found really useful that I know that my clients have found useful because they've shared that experience with me. And these are like activities, things you might do that you might put in your toolkit box, or that you might have on you, or know that you can go to as part of your toolkit. And a yoga mat is one of them. And sometimes we don't actually have a yoga mat, and you don't need a yoga mat to practice yoga. But the issue with the yoga mat is that it gives you a sense of space and parameter of where you can be in that moment. But you can use anything. You could use a blanket. It doesn't matter. So having something that will assist you in taking some time out to sit quietly or to physically move. Yoga will offer a moment of pause so that you can either focus on the something that is negatively impacting you, or it can get you to sit with it and become friends with it and get to know it. So you can either want to shift the mood, and that's fine, or you can say, actually, I want to get to know you. Why are you here? What triggers you? How do I behave when you're here? Do I like how I behave and who I am when you're here? And you can sit with it and really make friends with it and keep it company. It's no different to having a friend. You know, when you have a friend, you want to know all about them, don't you? You want to keep them company in some way. You want to love them. And it's the same with yourself. So I would say, you know, having something that supports you, taking a moment to be still, whether it's a little spot in a corner or whether it's just the actual physical yoga mat, to be still, be with your thoughts, to find a way with breath to shift them or to sit with them if the environment is conducive to that, because we don't know what it's going to bring up, and to allow yourself to really understand what's going on with you. Because once we bring awareness in, as you know, we can create change. There's colouring books. They're all the rage for people to be able to find a place of distraction. And they allow us to go into what positive psychologists call our flow. You know, that place where time doesn't matter. You don't even notice that 10 hours have gone by. And you are just one pointedness on that image and colouring it in. And that can be a beautiful way to come away from any negative emotional responses to things that have happened to you. And that's not about obscuring them. It's just about taking a break from them in order to go back to that point. And then the last one, Amy, is bodywork, which is physical. So this thing about appreciating, you know, in your either metaphorical toolkit box or your real tangible toolkit box, having things like spiky balls if you want to massage feet or parts of your body, having things that you know, pressure, anxiety balls you can squeeze, having cards and flyers of therapists in the box. So, you know, acupuncture, osteopathy, physiotherapist, having a contact number for your spa where you can go and get your nails done, where you can get an Indian head massage. If it's not in your phone, you know, you've got it there to just be able to say, right, I've got half an hour, they're free, I'm going to go and just switch off and do that. So it's really about appreciating what serves you, and that in itself takes time for you to come out of your tirade of world and work out what would you put in the toolkit box. It doesn't just suddenly appear. You have to take the time to decide, what do I need to be the best I can be, even on my worst days? What can I use to get me out of the funk and to move into the place of powerful being and really go out there to serve others, to be able to self-express, to understand that you are unique and everything that happens to you is a consequence of your experiences, but it doesn't mean that you have to live by that experience. You can change it anytime you want. You just got to know that you can and decide to.
Well, I think that is the perfect note to end on, Nicolette. Fabulous. What a gift you truly are. Like, I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing. And I want more people to be able to find you. So how can people find you?
Sure. First off, you can go, I think the best thing for me to offer is the website, because all of my social media links are on there. You can go to the website, which is thecreativegenius.co.uk. thecreativegenius.co.uk. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, and I have a little presence on YouTube, which will be growing very, very soon.
Amazing.
Because of lockdown.
Yes.
I'm soon to go on iTunes, but on most popular platforms, you can find my show, which is the Creative Genius Show. It is post-produced as a podcast. So I just invite you to check out the Creative Genius Show on your favorite Spotify or whatever, and listen to Amy's interview when I interviewed her. She's amazing, and just hear, you know, her contribution.
Thank you so much for that, Nicolette. Thank you so much. Take care of yourself, and I look forward to seeing what you do next.
Amy, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Thank you so much for watching this. And if you'd like to see more videos in this series, please remember to subscribe to Why This?